Chapter 3. If you're here, I must be dying. As I've grown older, and hopefully wiser, I've come to realise we are all the sum of our parts. To understand what makes us who we are, it's often useful to learn a little of what happened before we were born. The life experiences of our parents can have a very profound impact on our own personalities, attitudes and behaviours. Even though I hardly saw him for more than 20 years, my father has cast a giant shadow over my life. He and my mother split up when I was little more than a baby. As a child, I would sit for hours at the window, waiting in vain for him to visit. I would go through ridiculous, superstitious rituals, such as if I sat with my legs crossed in a certain way, he would come, because that's how I was sitting the last time he visited. At school, I would make up fanciful stories about him being a rich businessman with a private jet who was always working abroad on some major deal. I could never understand what I had done that was so wrong that he didn't want to see me. Only now, as I've gotten to know him through adult eyes and discovered what made him the man he is, can I finally understand what went wrong and why he walked away from my brother and I. I've learned to forgive, even though I'll never forget. It was only recently that I discovered just how difficult my father's life had been and the circumstances that made him stay away for so long. Sitting in a pub, sipping an orange juice, my father told me things he had never spoken about, knowledge he had kept bottled up for decades, but had shaped his views and some of his actions. By all accounts, his parents appeared to have had something of a turbulent relationship that had been built on a secret of lies and deception. When he was about 7 or 8 years old, late one night, his parents were entertaining friends when he heard his mother's voice coming from the hallway. He could just about make out her whispering to one of her pals. What he heard was a bombshell. Without having to strain too much to catch the conversation, he listened to his mum admit to her friend that the man he thought was his father wasn't. To learn the man he called Dad wasn't his biological father was absolutely devastating. What made it worse was that he wasn't supposed to know. It was a secret he had to live with and could never talk about to anyone. By the time my father had reached the age of 12, my grandmother Mary had met another man, and my grandfather had walked out on his children. Drinking was a big part of the culture in Glasgow when he was growing up, and both his mother and her new man were very heavy drinkers. There were numerous occasions when my dad and his two younger sisters, Andrea and Wilma, were left to go hungry because all the money that came into the house had been spent on alcohol. Things eventually got so bad that while my dad was still only 12 years old, he was forced to take on the role as a main carer for his sisters. My grandmother was clearly an alcoholic. She got involved with a clique of around 10 other very heavy drinkers who would pool their cash for booze, and my dad would sit and wait until his mother passed out from the drink before raiding her handbag to steal enough money to buy food for his sisters and himself. The responsibility of looking after his siblings meant my dad rarely attended school. He quit full-time education at the age of 12, at a time when the legal minimum age to leave school was 16. In order to feed his sisters and keep a roof over their heads, he lied about his age to get a job. He walked for miles and miles for days on end across Glasgow, knocking on doors, calling into shops, and stopping by industrial sheds, begging anyone to give him a chance. After weeks of trying, he finally found an opening with a bakery delivering bread. For almost 3 years, he worked long hours with the bakery. My dad finally realised that the people who were supposed to love and look after him were obsessed with drink and preferred getting drunk and fighting to living a normal life. He had to escape. At the age of 15, he left his mother's home to go and stay with an aunt in Castlemilk. The last time my dad and his mum spoke was when she was in hospital. They hadn't spoken for 3 years at that point. When he went to the hospital, she was sleeping, so he took a chair and sat by her side for several hours, When she woke up and saw him there was no Hollywood reconciliation or deathbed expressions of love. Her only words were, "Fuck, if you're here, I must be dying." Those were the last words she ever said to him. She passed away about 2 hours later. Even after all she put him through, I know he was really hurt by it, and he still regrets that he didn't try harder to help her. I doubt there was much he could have done. She was an alcoholic who didn't want to be helped. Despite the scarcity of jobs, he managed to secure himself a 4-year apprenticeship as a glazer. For the first time in his life, things were looking positive. However, there was still something missing. Looking back, he admits now that he didn't know exactly what he wanted. All he knew was that there had to be a better way of living, one that he had never experienced before. And he found it with my mum's family.